Good evening. Today, our fellow citizens, our way of life, our very freedom came under attack in a series of deliberate and deadly terrorist acts.
I was just in awe of everything. It looked like a complete and total war zone, you know, nothing that you could ever imagine.
None of us will ever forget this day. Yet we go forward to defend freedom and all that is good and just in our world.
Hi there, everyone, and thanks for being with us. We are looking back on 20 years since September 11th, 2001, a pivotal moment that shaped the lives of millions of Americans. The terrorist attacks in New York, Washington, and Pennsylvania marked a turning point for our country, including for millions of Texans.
We'll bring you just some of their stories, stories of faith, stories of anguish, and stories of loss. Through it all, Texans stepped up to serve, from the East Coast to missions overseas. Now, after 20 years, Texans still remember 9/11.
Of the thousands at the World Trade Center on that fateful Tuesday, one was Nathan Harness. A dream job landed him on the 61st floor of the South Tower in the beginning of his career. 25 News reporter Nick Bradshaw sits down with a Texas A&M professor as he remembers 9/11.
August 6, 2001. President George W. Bush is in Central Texas, on vacation at the Western White House. While behind these gates at his ranch in Crawford, Bush received a classified intelligence memo titled, quote, "Bin Laden determined to strike in U.S."
Grew up in rural Arkansas, so from a town of 10,000 people.
At the same time, 22-year-old Matt Harns is preparing for his dream job.
She was working in the World Trade Center just for a little while, and she took this picture.
That same friend helped Nathan, who's now a professor at Texas A&M.
She helped me get the job. She thought I died that day and always felt really guilty that she had got me this job.
Nathan moves to the Big Apple.
You're the first person in your family to ever leave, and then you get to New York and you see buildings that you can't fathom from a size, just a scope and a scale, and people from all over the world, and food you've never even heard of before. To World Trade Center, New York. When I came in the morning of 9/11, that's me.
His first day of work, Nathan rides the elevator to the 61st floor.
I'm then an employee of Morgan Stanley Dean Witter.
There's like planes, look, they're going inside the buildings, everybody's outside going crazy.
8:46 a.m., a plane hits Tower 1.
Everyone was quiet. Everyone was pressed up against the windows, and I wondered, what is going on? What's everybody looking at? I could see burning office papers floating in the sky on fire.
Trying to evacuate, he makes it down 20 floors before this happens.
We knew nothing about planes, nothing about terrorism.
And there's more explosions right now. Hold on, people are running.
Hold on just a moment. We've got an explosion inside.
That hit with a ton of kinetic energy into our building. It took me to my knees. I couldn't continue to stand up, and people are screaming, "We're gonna die." And people are having heart attacks right there at that moment.
60 on page 153.
By this point, the rest of the world is glued to the TV coverage.
Today, we've had a national tragedy. 2 airplanes have crashed into the World Trade Center in an apparent terrorist attack on our country.
Nathan's mom and dad are a world away in Europe. He has no way to contact them.
I remember praying out to God for a lifeline. Give me a lifeline. And that was the first time that I saw rescue personnel. For many of us, that was a lifeline. The moment that you think things aren't going to be okay, but a rescue personnel shows up.
Like so many did, Nathan thought about jumping out the window, but the 22-year-old keeps going. In making his way to these survivor steps, that are now in the 9/11 Museum in New York City.
Walking down those stairs, I think that was a moment where I felt a sense of, we're gonna make it. A lot of us are gonna make it. And we've got a pathway out.
Nathan is one of the lucky ones. He makes it out. Debris still falling.
And I look back behind me and I see the tower list to the right.
A huge explosion now, raining debris on all of us. We better get out of the way.
So I ran because smoke began to come after me. And I couldn't see the building anymore, it was gone. I could see a cloud of smoke. I could see people, but I couldn't see what was my tower. So it's from my dad, and he and my mom were traveling across Europe. He's in Italy, and he's on the plane ride back, and he pins just a few things to me in memory, and it says that the story of your survival of the World Trade Center is not complete. The effects, or better, the after effects of this trauma will continue to shape your life for many days and years.
That guy needs some oxygen if someone can share it with him. 10-4. Thanks.
20 years later, Nathan believes in sharing his story with a younger generation, so they will never forget.
Clearly it changed my opportunity to walk out of a building, but it also changed the way that I walked every day since.
Nick Bradshaw, 25 News.
Thank you, Nick. Shortly after the attacks on the Twin Towers, the heart of our nation's military came under siege. Future Texan Senator Brian Birdwell, then a lieutenant colonel, thought that Tuesday morning was just another day at the office. But 9/11 would change his life and his faith, now 2 decades later.
On the morning of September 11th, I was a lieutenant colonel. My command board was going to meet. I was a steady Freddy. I wasn't setting the world on fire. Didn't know if I was going to be chosen for battalion command, but I was at a stage of, I wanted to be that guy that got to full colonel, retires at 30 years, and then gets the RV and drives around the country. The Lord had something else in mind that day. At about 8:50, 8:55, near 9 o'clock, Sandy, one of my two co-workers that were killed that morning, Sandy Taylor, Sandy gets a call from her daughter Sam up in New York. Sandy stands up and says, Sam just said, planes hit the World Trade Center. And I would kneel down with Cheryl and Sandy and just lead that prayer that just says, Lord, we love our first responders, be with them, but it's going to be you doing the bulk of the life-saving today.
You are a New York City firefighter. Drop what you're doing, report to your company.
At about 9:30, 9:35, I told Sandy and Cheryl I needed to step out, go to the men's restroom, that I'd be back momentarily, and those were the last words that I would speak to my two co-workers. When the plane makes impact, I'm set ablaze. I mean, this is really the definition of terrorism. The concussion and the vacuum of an 80-ton explosion. And so in those moments, I did what we in the military are never trained to do, and that's surrender and give up. And I screamed out in a very loud voice, Jesus, I'm coming to see you. It wasn't, Lord, save me from this calamity. And as I opened my eyes, waiting for that, okay, Lord, why aren't we finishing this? I could see in the distance light reflecting off the tile. The best way to describe me is there are chunks hanging off of me. My eyes are I can already feel the swelling in my face. As I'm staggering down the hallway, I cover about 25, 30 yards. 4 men come out of the B-ring doors, Bill McKinnon, Roy Wallace, John Davies, and Chuck Knobloch. And they weren't coming to look for me particularly. They were trying to, because the plane had cut their office areas in half. This is not a place to tarry and wait for medical care to get to me. Fire's burning at the crash site, smoke's filling up, and in that first exertion to pick me up, they pull chunks off of me, and I begin screaming at them to leave me alone. And because I know in my heart I'm telling them to leave me there to die. But essentially, Bill, Roy, Chuck, and John, instead of grasping me, grip each other's arms with my body weight resting on their handshaking arms. I received my first medical care from a great Air Force doctor named John Baxter. He just happened to have his go bag with him, and he get to Georgetown, and the attending physician is Dr. Michael Williams, and he's been formally trained at the Washington Hospital Center in trauma, how to be a train wreck doctor. Well, I'm not getting evacuated to the Washington Hospital Center because of the restriction on air flights. Dr. Williams comes to the left-hand side, says, "Brian, we're going to do everything that we possibly can for you." And my eyes are nearly closed now from the swelling of the head and the eye socket area. But I can see in his eyes, I mean, there's just the gravity of knowing that, you know, that my death is either imminent, you know, or whatever it is I'm about to walk into is going to be the hardest thing I've ever been asked to do. In a burn unit ICU, the angel of death is standing in the corner. But when I get out of ICU and I'm a 6-foot infant with a wreck of a body, what I miss of those very difficult days in ICU and in step-down care, the numbers of things that because of the damage done to my body and everything being a prayer for, Lord, give me the ability to do this. Was I as much a believer before September 11th as I am now? Yes, sir. All those blessings and all those traumas are worth every moment of your freedom and every other citizen in this country's freedom.
Coming up, one man saw 9/11 in a special way.
Find out how his photos gave an inside look aboard Air Force One that day and an inside look at the president in the weeks to follow. September 11th drastically changed the course of the country and of the Bush presidency. Perhaps no man witnessed more of the decisions and key moments with the president than Eric Draper. Now, his name might not ring a bell, but there's no question you'll recognize his work. Take photos for a living, especially of the commander-in-chief, and you get a front row seat to history.
We got very serious. You can tell he was respectful of the children that he was reading to. But you can tell something was wrong.
For Eric Draper, the chief photographer to President George W. Bush, no moment proved more defining than 9/11.
Really focused on the president's reaction to what was happening. And, you know, I made a picture of him walking by that television with the live pictures of the burning towers. He picked up a notepad and he started writing his first thoughts to make his first statement.
From the instant the president was notified of the first plane striking the Twin Towers to those pivotal first public remarks.
2 airplanes have crashed into the World Trade Center.
To rushing off to Air Force One, Draper documented it frame by frame.
I remember arriving at the airplane, the engines were on already on Air Force One, and typically they're not on until the president boards. And I remember standing next to the president where there's a huddle around him, the Secret Service, Andy Card, the military aide, all telling him that it was not safe to return to Washington. I remember how angry he was, and I remember he turned and looked at me, and it felt like he was looking through me. I was so close to the action. It was very, very surreal, very intense.
In the hours and days that followed, Draper would capture some of the most iconic images now associated with that tragedy.
You can feel the emotion while we're there. I mean, we walk in there and you can still feel the heat from the rubble as we toured the disaster zone. And the firefighters, they're still angry. They were hugging him, they were crying. They really wanted him to do something. And that's when he stood on the rubble and with the bullhorn.
I can hear you, the rest of the world hears you, and the people who knocked these buildings down will hear all of us soon.
A former AP photographer, Eric would spend all 8 years of the Bush White House snapping photos, taking nearly 1 million in total, no matter where the president went.
You know, mountain biking or cutting cedar that would grow like weeds on the ranch, and he would recruit staff like myself to help him. And, you know, it was a great way to burn off steam.
In fact, it's at the Bush family ranch here in central Texas where Draper says he caught his favorite image, the president driving his pickup only weeks before everything shifted.
But just that moment, a month before 9/11, when I always see that photo, I see a sense of innocence before the world changed. That picture to me stands out.
An innocence that was soon lost 20 years ago this week.
Before a time of social media and real-time news updates, most Texans depended on their local news stations for insight. First Alert Chief Meteorologist Matt Hines explains where he was on 9/11.
So here's September 11th for me. I was asleep, so as the phone rang, so finally about 9:20, 9:25-ish, I answer the phone. It's my mom who's at work. She was a school teacher at the time in Mesquite, just east of Dallas. And she went, "Can you believe what's going on?" I had no idea what she was talking about. So I turn on the TV and I see just chaos going on.
The building's exploding right now. You got people running up the street.
Okay.
I don't want to tell you what's going on.
I remember specifically, my mom tells me this quote every year. "Mom, what are they doing to my country?" And it was devastating. And we sat there and cried. At the time, I was part of the 413th Civil Affairs Battalion. After I hung up with my mom, my commander called. And it was, "Matt, I don't have anything official for you, but I need you to be ready for anything." And hung up from that, still watching TV, and I'm like, well, got my duffel bag out, I got my uniforms out, so I go to work. And I walked in and I looked at my boss, my news director, and I was like, "I don't know what's going to happen. I may get called up." He was like, "You do what you have to. If you get called up, you do what you have to do." It was scary in that moment, knowing, okay, where am I going to be 24 hours from now, 48 hours from now? I mean, when you're living in that moment, you don't know if it's going to continue. And my job that day was to write crawls, that go across the bottom of the screen about where you can donate blood, where you can make donations, what church you can go to for this. And I mean, we were just getting a flood of calls. It's probably Thursday or Friday. And we all switched stations and paired up with someone from another station. And we all broadcast together. That was an amazing unifying moment that you just don't see. We're competitors and competition's good. It makes everyone better. But at that moment, we were humans, we were Americans, and we all came together for that moment. It's one of the coolest things that I've ever experienced in the media business. And I took that and wow, we can really do something. We are really important in a time of national emergency, or any emergency, even if it comes down to just tornado warnings or anything like that. People depend on us. September 11th, that molded me to drive me to serve the public. A moment like that's going to shape how you think and how you do your job.
Texas Task Force 1 is known across the country as the state's elite search and rescue team.
We talked to a former member about what it was like to deploy to Ground Zero. Texas A&M Task Force 1 was one of many teams that responded to Ground Zero days after the terrorist attacks. I spoke to former Task Force 1 member Mike Donahoe as he remembers where he was when the world stopped turning. Tuesday, September 11, 2001 started out like any other day for former Bryan Fire Chief Mike Donahoe.
I was at work at the fire station when, the morning events started to unfold. And someone came into the offices and said, "Turn on the news, something's happening in New York City."
2 hours later, Texas Task Force 1 was activated.
By 10 o'clock, we had gotten notification that our task force had been activated. And when that happens, there's a 4-hour window by which the team members must report to College Station because that's the home base. And of course, those of us that lived locally, it's not a 4-hour drive to College Station. So, I was able to go home and get my go bag and start preparing myself. My next step was to stop by my wife's place of employment and meet with her and let her know that we had been activated.
Days following the attack, Texas Task Force 1 sent 78 members, including Donahoe, to Ground Zero.
We actually thought that we were leaving, as soon as everybody got there, that we'd be gone. And, we started getting notifications from the FEMA group. First they told us we were going to the Pentagon, then they told us to stand down. Then they told us we were going to New York City, then they told us to stand down. So we activated on September 11th, and it was actually probably 3 or 4 days after that that we actually left Bryan College Station to head to New York.
Texas Task Force 1 was in New York City for 10 days. 20 years later, Donahoe says he can still recall the sights, sounds, and smells of Ground Zero.
They're still with you. You know, you think about things, and like I said, there's some of those triggers that bring back memories and things. Something as simple as a 5-gallon bucket to me brings back a memory, because everything we did, we had a 5-gallon bucket with us. When you were resting, you sat on a bucket. When you found something, you put it in a bucket. You know, you carried your tools in a bucket.
As he remembers the days that followed the terrorist attacks, Donahoe never thought he would be a part of a task force that responds to an event the magnitude of 9/11.
I said it back then and I'll say it again, you know, being a responder from Bryan College Station that responded to an emergency in New York City is just something that I never ever thought could happen. And, you know, TEACS itself and what TEACS brings to this community and what they do all over the world. You know, they are a world-renowned training facility for emergency responders. And, you know, they're constantly changing and perfecting preparation, training, and response.
And when he sits down to remember 9/11, Donahoe is proud to say he was a member of Texas Task Force 1 who responded to Ground Zero.
I tell people we saw a lot of bad things, you know, and we saw a lot of good things. You know, I choose to remember most of the good things, you know, and I'm proud of what I do, but to me, it doesn't hurt to talk about it.
Well, as Task Force 1 deployed to Lower Manhattan that day, it wasn't just Texas men and women on the ground. Search and rescue dogs make up a vital part of the FEMA team. 25 News anchor Naya Gonzalez tells us about one of the most celebrated canine heroes.
The canines of Task Force 1 are considered the special forces of dog search and rescue. They're trained to go where no human rescue worker can enter safely.
There's a lot of places we'll send dogs that we don't go into because, I mean, face it, I'm on 2 legs and I'm just not as stable as they are.
One of the best was a golden retriever named Brittany. She started training for search and rescue at just 8 years old. Canine search specialist Bob Deeds remembers her first assignment alongside his dog Kinsey. Ground Zero on September 11th, 2001.
We knew what to do, we were trained. I didn't even realize how well we were trained until we actually started working. And then it's like, holy cow, my dog knows what she's doing and I actually know what I'm doing.
Brittany worked Ground Zero for 10 days searching for signs of life. She and other rescue dogs spent hours crawling through mangled steel and concrete.
My first initial thought was, my dog's gonna get hurt. That's what I thought right off the bat.
During Brittany's grueling shift surrounded by death and destruction, part of her service and that of other dogs included comforting first responders.
I'd say go over into the building over here and hide. I'm gonna give you a toy. When my dog comes and barks at you, give him the toy. And we would do that for our dog and also for the firefighter. In fact, I always tell people my dog was 25% search dog and 75% therapy dog.
Brittany retired from service at age 9, outliving all other 9/11 rescue dogs that worked Ground Zero. She died in 2016 and received a hero's funeral. Today, a bronze statue stands guard at the Cypress Firehouse. Brittany called home. She's there, standing at attention, just like she did at Ground Zero.
Now, besides her work on 9/11, Brittany's long list of deployments include helping with search and rescue missions during Hurricanes Rita, Ivan, and also Katrina.
Coming up, firehouses across the country remember 9/11 in their own unique way.
We check in with one small Texas fire station keeping the memory of those lost alive, now 2 decades later. A lot of firehouses across the country hold a special place of honor for the fallen of 9/11. And the firefighters of one small Central Texas town are no different. For them, a special reminder of that day greets them every time they respond to a call.
Drive through a sleepy Texas town of some 7,200 and you won't find many strangers.
Tyler Gillis.
It's one of the reasons to call a place like this home.
Firefighting Lampasas is awesome. It's a great community.
There are more than a dozen firefighters that work here.
You might have a house fire one day, or we have a huge grass fire out in the county and wrecks all over, you never know.
But one thing they all count on, is a daily reminder of the dangers to the job here or 1,700 miles away in New York City.
Just to have a piece to remember.
For 17 years now, a rusting piece of steel weighing 4,000 pounds has sat outside the firehouse, a subtle but powerful remembrance of what happened 20 years ago.
Homeroom, and we got to watch it on the TV, and my mom came and picked us up out of school and said, we're going home.
Firefighting isn't like a lot of jobs. These men and women run toward the chaos, not away. On 9/11, more than 400 first responders lost their lives, including 343 firefighters.
I had little kids, and my buddies had little kids, so it's all, you don't want to see that happen to anybody.
Firehouses across the country have similar remnants from the Twin Towers, no matter that it happened half a country away in our country's biggest city. In small-town Texas, the enormity of that day still hits close to home.
It's always there in the back of your head, though.
For those willing to put their lives on the line so others can live.
Thanks for watching 20 years later, Texans remember 9/11 during this special anniversary week.
Before we leave, we want to acknowledge the courage and sacrifice so many made on that day. And to those still living with the pain of 9/11, know you are not alone and you will not be forgotten.